Take it away, Phil. This is pretty much the standard one that Jack was showing us, and then I did another one where I decided to kind of sculpt the edges down in there, and it's made out of poplar, and it kind of fills the square, kind of a deal. Since we've got a lot of stuff going here, I want to just say quickly on the show and tell, I brought a couple of carving vices in over on the far table, so if you have any, if you took a look at them, have any questions, ask me sometime.
Proof of concept, but the only thing is, I thought it was really neat because it exactly fits those friggin' ball candles. Great idea.
So when I did my demo, I promised I would do a challenge. This was a big cube. It's now a three-pointed ball thing. So, and then based on last month, I started doing this, turned this out, hollowed out a little bit, carved the top a little bit. I think it needs more work. My carving skills are really poor, but it was more fun to do than I thought it was going to be. So, two things.
Well, I tried the make something from a cube, and I will admit that I did not care for turning that much air. We got this far. I planned to carve something out of this, probably a rose, but we didn't get that far because I was spending all my time getting ready for the demo, so I have the bird that is turned and then carved for that part of the challenge.
Stood before you 2.5 years ago when I turned my first plumeria flower. The plumeria flower is my wife's favorite flower, and we actually have a tree that we grow, and we have to put it in the garage during the wintertime. And so I took 3 of my best pieces that I had made last year to the AAW in Portland, and my backpack with those 3 pieces got stolen when somebody broke the window and grabbed the backpack out of the trunk, and it was like getting kicked right in the you-know-what. So, and knowing that it was just like this, I had to make a new one. And luckily, Jim Lambie was at the AEW with me, and so when we talked back here, he said, well, he happened to have a piece of Norfolk Island pine, which this is made out of. And so I traded him a piece that I had done and took that piece of wood and was carving away on it when Trent did his carving. So it was easy for me to just finish this piece and use it as my challenge. I'm in the process of making another one though, so we'll see if I can get that one done for January.
I brought along an eBay purchase, and I had the periodic will post stuff on my Facebook page, and so the question of how, taking pictures and all that sort of thing. So the idea is that you can put your video, make about a 15 seconds. It's got 2 speeds, fast and slow, and it takes 15 seconds to make a revolution. So if you want to make a video while you're talking about, or will finally turn. It's got to be centered. This thing's got to wait to the side. But for small faces, it works great to make videos. Well, the story here is I got this elm burl, and I decided to try to make something out of it. Well, it was about the size of this table, and of course I thought about cutting it up, and I did, and then I ended up with a teardrop space. And I said, I don't want to get rid of that, so as we were doing carving, I turned the bowl on the inside, turned the bowl on the back, and then this recess forms, you know, and so then you end up with this wing hanging out here, and the idea is to turn it and not get caught up with it. So that worked out, and I got it done, and turned out this is just a penetrating oil finish, and it was not my first burl, but it was a lot of fun to do. But it was practice for the thing we'll talk about later for a birch bowl that I've made. So I think it's something to consider if you're doing videos and want to make a short presentation. Here you go.
This is my cube, and it did have pink beads all the way around here before I dropped it earlier today, so had to take those off. And this is my carving. I made a plate and then carved a poinsettia. Kind of my first, I guess, since college 40 years ago, and my made in Japan carving tools didn't really cut it, so I used wood Dremel.
Well, here's my cube bowl, but it somehow when I made it, it didn't look right. That's when Linda said, well, we need to watch the video and get the instructions. So hers turned out better than mine, but then I made this one to kind of make up for it. And then our carving bowl, I made this. The neighbors across the street took down a rain tree, a golden rain tree. So I went and asked the tree trimmers if I could have some of it, and I got that. And carved it in the shape of a rain tree leaf, and I think it's kind of cool.
Well, here's my cube box, and then I went, well, it's got a character all its own. I went to the Segmators Symposium in St. Louis last month, and the first demo I went to was by a man named Michael Hoslick, and he didn't do segmented turning. So how he ended up being a demonstrator at a Segmented Turners Symposium, he wasn't sure, but he tried. And so he came up with, he showed one, I think he actually demoed it here at the AEW here in Kansas City too. He was one of the demonstrators here. And basically you start with a cylinder and you shape it so it comes out and comes to a point on each end. And then before you turn a tenon on the end, and then you hollow it out, and then you turn the outside between centers, and then you cut segments out of it, pie-shaped. And some of the ones that he's got, it actually, if you put it together, it actually goes, it starts corkscrewing around. He's got it long enough and enough segments in it that it'll actually curve on around. Well, when I did mine, I think I got my friction, my joint just a little too tight, so I had to turn it a little bit. And when I did, it got a little bit off center. And so theoretically, you should be able to put this back together in any shape, any direction, and it'll line up all the way around, and it'll be. But I he has textures on his and stuff, and so I tried to mimic it, and my Dremel lasted for about 3/4 of the way through, and then it started smoking, and decided, okay, that's it, I'm done. So.
See, after that, doesn't it become wood burning?
Yes. But it's more burning that you don't want.
So I was on a date with my wife, which I think is kind of an oxymoron because I kind of figured when you married them that the dating was over. But anyway, we were coming down on 435 and I said, hey, have you ever been to the Moon Marble Company? No. And so we ended up going to the Moon Marble Company, and I purchased a very expensive, nice little marble that happens to just fit so nicely into one of those little triangular shaped deals that she loves it. She keeps it at her office, and I made big points that day on my date. This was actually, I was just turning one of those three-sided deals and realized with my tenon that I was ending up with kind of a long pointy thing, and decided I'd just leave it and let it be a ring holder. And so I cut some rings out of the same diamond wood. That was a fun little project. This was my attempt at the Trent Bosch demo, which I got pretty close to what he was showing. I wasn't near as big. The first piece I started with was a little larger, was more in the shape that he was going with, and then I broke it, and so the only thing I had was a cutoff about 5 inches long, and so I used it was a branch, and I used it to create the outer form and do the carving. I did the carving with a Dremel tool. This in the middle was just because to me it looked like an emerging flower of some sort, and so I just kind of created what I saw coming out of it, which is really just a bunch of bamboo skewers. I steam bent some of them and then rolled the little beads to put on it. And I did do some shavings off of the bamboo and highlighted those in pink and yellow and purple, and that really made a nice finishing touch. And the stand, I had one piece of green plexiglass left out of some stuff I'd done, and in another project I found how to bend plexiglass on the stove. My wife thought I was crazy, but I just wanted something where it could set and display well, so that was what I ended up with.
I don't know. I guess maybe I'm not even supposed to be up here. I didn't carve mine. In fact, I turned mine so that I wouldn't have to. I had to turn 3 of these little discs that go in here. The first 2 are out of walnut. Or not walnut, oak. He said oak, ash, and something else was what you were supposed to use. And I got them to bend in there. One of them broke, and I don't remember what happened to the other one, but my biggest problem was getting the side or edges of the piece I put in there to curve enough to be glued to the inside. And so this guy I know, he said he had made his out of walnut, and so I figured I'd try that and see what happened, and it seemed to work. So.
Any other challenge participants? Okay, now it's time for the tool drawing, and we need an impartial third party to draw the winning ticket out. So, Rich, read off the last 3.
The last 3, 7, 7, 5.
7, 7. Oh, Dan! Congratulations! You just
going to be first?
I'll be first. I don't want to hold the show up. I don't want to hold the show up. My name's Josh. I'm brand new at wood turning. That's why I want to join and learn from you guys. This is the first bowl I've ever turned. And
So this is for the newsletter and everything. You guys stand back here. Does he have to put his toes on the tape, Sean? Is that anyway?
all right.
But this is
So this is my first attempt at turning a bowl. First attempt at using a detail gouge, and it was a lot of fun. I look forward to getting to know you guys and learning more about turning bowls. And these are some really impressive pieces you guys have brought here. Thank you.
Congratulations on your first bowl.
Sign it and date it, and don't ever let go of it.
That's right.
That was my son there, so I can't be upstage. I got to be second. All right, here we go. Same.
That's your first bowl?
First bowl. This is my first bowl right here. He got me encouraged to do this. And so I turned my first bowl, and he turned his after me. And so we're on the road to success here, and enjoy visiting with all you folks, and hope to see you in the future.
What's your name?
Oh, John Wilson. Thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody.
We ought to congratulate you guys, because you're now been like officially bit by the wood turning bug. You don't know what that means.
And they know the routine on the display table.
Is that going to be in the? Okay, somebody got the table and the cameras. Did the camera get off? There we go. Okay. This was 2 pieces of big leaf maple burl, that I got down at SWAT down in Texas. They sold a lot of that, a lot of mesquite. This was finished with just tung oil and the BL system, which kept the color really, really light. A lot of eyes in it. This one is also its natural color. Was a slab of wood I bought with one natural edge. And so on. I mean, they were both big leaf maple burls. Okay, thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Who's next? Don't be shy. I want to hear the story on that, Chuck. That's interesting.
A friend of mine gave me some walnut that was shaped like a football, and I've been figuring out what in the world to do with it, and I started turning it, and I saw somebody was doing like a box with, it's hard to see in here, but it's, if you look through the lines, I managed to make a vase inside of itself. On the inside, I had to put something in here because when I was working it, I kept on seeing a spark come up, and I was wondering what the heck was that. This thing has a rock built inside of itself. So to make the inside kind of round, I had to fill it up with some turquoise. It was an idea.
That's interesting. So, how many times you have to sharpen your tool after you hit that rock?
Well, it was a carbide tool, so it wasn't any big deal.
Oh, okay. That's neat, though. I like that.
And the rock's still in here.
All natural. That is gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. Where's our camera?
You got to see the feather in that.
Yeah, this was really an exceptional piece of walnut. A buddy of mine got it from a guy that trimmed trees for one of the utilities, and gave him a big load of walnut. But actually the bottom side of this is prettier than the inside. But it was I turned it about a year and a half ago, and then finally got it off the shelf to finish. And
I had brought a bunch of them that I finished, but I thought this was by far the prettiest piece of wood I've ever turned.
What's so neat about that is that the feather is in both sides.
Yeah.
Normally it's just in one.
Yeah, it shows through. So
Oh, I got to where you got the material for that.
So I saw an article in the AAW, didn't read it, but it was pretty self-explanatory through the pictures I was looking at. And this was basically the item that they were after. He had attached his initial chunk with a faceplate, and then there were 2 screws. And so he would cut this notch out because of the screw hole here, and he'd cut it off flat because of the screw hole there. And then it does set if you got a relatively flat surface. Fun little thing, and it was something I'd never tried, was the lattice type work. So I started playing around, and I went small because it's faster and it's not as time consuming to do. Well, not everything worked out the way I wanted it to. And I had some that would break, and I started kind of just playing with those pieces and shaping them and carving parts away. And it made some interesting just little pieces that I set around my desk and look at and go, wow. And then one of them I was looking at and I said, ow. And had a little bit of veneer and kind of made the owl come out of this piece, but that was kind of a fun little deal. I don't know if you remember, but a couple months ago there was a piece of just a chunk of ugly polyester up there on the auction, and so I brought it in and sliced it into thinner slices on the bandsaw, and have been making some medallions. And in this case, I made a couple of what will ultimately be earrings, because I found the place that I like the colors in it, and so just found the right spot and cut a generally round piece, and then use tape on all of these items. Use tape on a faceplate, no chucking or anything. So it was double stick tape on a faceplate. It was made it fast and easy and fun, and I would advise anybody to get some double stick tape if you don't have any, because it's fun for a lot of different applications that I've found. Thank you.
There have been no less than about a half a dozen people say, how do you do that? Because that doesn't turn. You can't turn that.
You can't do that. How we set up for where we are, okay? All right, this is a river birch tree that was in my son's neighbor's yard, having fallen down, and he just threw it up in the big pile. And so I went over and picked up a piece. And obviously the feature is a little bird nest in the end. And so I thought, I've got to make a turning out of that. And so the story begins with getting it on center, and that's not too bad because you can turn this side of it. And then you suddenly realize, you can't finish it. So then I thought, well, okay, we'll think about that. So we said, but you can turn this. So, turn it over and go at it. And a vacuum chuck did help a little bit on this. Now the trick is you end up with a section from the under this height to the top of this that can't be accessed, at least more than once. And you don't want to be there. So I thought carving, and I thought about a whole bunch of different things. And I thought, a steel grinder with a flap that's turned on a taper. You've seen those and you can get variations in grade. I think this was a medium grit, like maybe 80 grits or 60 grits, somewhere in there. It was a little bit rough. So the thing of it is, once you get it mounted, you can fix your tool rest to help you contour. Now the issue is you're really putting two bowls into one shape, and if you look closely, you'll see the wall thickness varies all over the place with this. But if you're feeling it, you really can't tell where one starts and the other begins. So the finish on it, essentially, I didn't have it quite dry enough when I did it the first time. And so the interior had developed a couple little cracks and it began to wiggle around. And so I went back in with power sander and opened up the finish on it again and sanded it. I did go buy one of the little right angle sanding electric sander, and those are indispensable for doing something on the interior. And I used a 3.5-inch disc on a 3-inch disc so that you could get the contour on it, and then it's finished with Watco neutral, and just to keep the color. But I think the grain in it was just gorgeous, and the fact that the bark is still attached is nothing short of a positive sign. Now, I do want to come clean. There is a section in here that got replaced because I nicked it, and it wasn't that it came loose, but I just had to cut that out and section it in, and that's kind of tricky. But anyway, it was a fun thing to do, and if I could get one of your little birds, he could have a house right there.
Anybody else for show and tell? Okay. All right. That concludes our meeting here, but before we leave, we've got reminders on the holiday party, December 10th. Don't miss that for sure. And the challenge for January is, again, Sue?
Any ornaments that you turn that you still have after the holiday.
Okay.